Welcome to Behind the Badge with your special guest, Lieutenant Williams, your news source for all things police in the city of Fond du Lac.
Today's topic, though, is downtown parking.
One thing that the downtown partnership, so like the collection of business owners plus the city of Fond du Lac has kind of told us to kind of re-emphasize is the enforcement of downtown parking. And what kind of happens with, I'm in charge of our community service officers that issue a lot of our parking tickets. And what happens in the winter, because they write so many winter ordinance tickets, which will be done March 15th, by the way.
Coming up soon.
They write so many winter ordinance, sometimes they because they're writing so many of those, they don't write as many of the downtown tickets. So we are going to, and I want to announce this because we're not looking to generate revenue. We're looking for compliance, okay? And I think a lot of people just don't know what our parking ordinances and restrictions are. If you're like someone that regularly parks downtown in Fond du Lac, I would advise you to go to our website on parking, because it can be complicated, and I'll be honest, I'm still learning. And I've been in charge of the unit for 3 years, and this week I learned something that I did not know, and we'll get to that. But one thing I want to kind of start on is, and I brought paperwork, and I know I always think on radio when I'm reading from a sheet. I had to turn up the lights in here just so we could see.
I had the lights off all the time. So.
Yeah, but for Main Street parking, on-street parking on Main Street, it's free, but there's a 2-hour limit for customers, for customers and clients only. Downtown employees, so if you work downtown, are encouraged to keep Main Street spaces open for customers. So that's a nice thing that we have, right? Like, we have free parking, and we could go to a system where we have meters all the time, but it's limited to 2 hours. And unfortunately, I think that's when we're finding the most abuses of the system, is people parking for over 2 hours. And it's very kind of, it's a lot of manpower to enforce, I'll say that, because not only do you have to have a vehicle to come and like chalk your tires, then you have to have your vehicle come in 2 hours later and write the tickets for them. But with that re-emphasis, you're going to start seeing that. So we got to be really strict if you're one of those people that
which might be me.
which would be a violator of that. We are going to be looking for those violations. Another thing is the permit parking. So we have lots where people have to purchase permits, and we're going to be looking for those. Now, the permits are supposed to be displayed on the rearview mirror of your vehicle. We understand that sometimes they fall off. Life isn't perfect and things like that. But it's got to be in a place where it's displayed so that my CSOs can see it. So if it's in your center console, that's not going to work out so well, because part of that permit parking is to have it where we can see it. So we're going to be looking for those. One of the biggest things, points of emphasis that my CSOs actually, I'm not going to say they like to enforce, but they feel like it's kind of a big deal, is the abuse of loading zones. We have several loading zones in downtown area, and we have a lot of violations of that. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to park because I'm just going to put in this loading zone because I'm only here temporary. And if that's it, they're good, right? But a lot of people are using those loading zones as more than temporary. Like, maybe they had to move a box into an apartment or something like that. And then maybe they have lunch, and maybe they have stayed for supper or whatever. You're only allowed to be there for that temporary movement, and then you have to move to a more permanent spot if you're going to stay longer. So what will happen is my CSOs will sit on a vehicle. So usually people have their hazards on, which I do appreciate in the loading zone. That is kind of like the international symbol for, I'm just going to be here for a little bit, right? Yeah. And but if they don't see that person come back to the car after a reasonable amount of time, then they're going to issue that ticket. So there's a lot of restrictions. There's different parking meters. We actually have a passport app that you can actually purchase parking for parking meters. Our CSOs are able to monitor that. So what we're looking for, and the downtown businesses want, the downtown businesses don't get any revenue generated from this. Like, the revenue goes into like a general fund. They are looking so that they can have open spots for their customers, and that's the biggest thing. Like, so they want customers to have access to their stores, and if someone's has an abandoned vehicle or something like that sitting in front of their store for weeks on end, that's one less spot for a customer that makes it more inconvenient for that person to have access to their space. And we want to make sure that we're utilizing this downtown, that it doesn't look like, like an abandoned scrapyard down there. So we are going to be enforcing those parking restrictions. So be mindful of that. And the best way to do that is to look at what those are. Like if you're going to be regularly parking downtown, then look online and find out the parking restrictions. I could read these all to you, but we'd all fall asleep by the end. So I've got one. I teased it, so I had to say it.
Okay.
There's one thing I did not know, and this has to do with when you park for like a 2-hour parking area. There's different zones, and just because you move, let's say you're parked and you're gonna be there for more than 2 hours, you go out right at that 2-hour mark, and you move over like one stall, you're technically still in violation. You have to actually move to a different zone after 2 hours. I'm just gonna read the ordinance. I know ordinances are dry, but it says park in any one space or in any combination of spaces for more than 2 hours during the times prohibited in the schedule. So it basically says that you, in that particular zone, if you want the zones, once again, you can go online. Even if you move that spot, you could still get ticketed. So that will be a point of emphasis as well with all the other things.
Know before you go. Right?
Know before you go. It's like that's a saying or something.